Ho, ho, ho. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this brand new episode of the Silver Screen Podcast. Apologies for not having a new episode up last week. We had all kinds of issues with Storm Arwen causing chaos left and right, but we seem to be, fingers crossed, on a better path at the minute, and things seem to be okay. So we are back with a new episode, and if you've been following social media, you'll know that this week's episode is appropriately festive themed. We are going to be discussing the best Christmas movies and forming a little top 10 list of our own here. But couldn't do it on my own. I'm always joined by a guest. And my special guest this week is about to introduce herself. Go ahead.
Hello, your special guest is your sister, Denise.
Hey! Yes, this is my sister Denise, who she doesn't do a lot of stuff on the internet and stuff. You might recognize her from the radio if you're listening and you listen to Coast Radio in the local sort of Northumberland area. And she does sort of party work and everything as well. So you might have even encountered her in person doing some DJing or kids' parties. But yeah, because kind of Christmas is a family type thing and these movies are all, you know, they're for families really, aren't they? I decided to have my sister on because we've got this sort of similar Christmas memories. We're roughly 2 years apart in age, but we're roughly shared all of our Christmases together. And my sister also has 2 kids of her own, another boy and girl. And we've also got lists from them to share. So from the sort of younger generation to see what they think. You have got lists for your Jessica, haven't you?
I have, yes, I've got Jessica's list here.
And I've got your Harry's list as well. That's your 2 kids, obviously. So so the way this is going to work then, basically, like I said, myself and Denise are going to give our top 10 Christmas movies. We've come up with a list. We're going to work backwards from 10 to number 1. I'm also going to read out Harry's. That's my little nephew, Denise's son. He gave me a top 10 list as well, and she's also going to read out Jessica's. We'll just alternate that so that we end up basically with 4 different number 10s, then number 9s, and then at the very end, we'll try and piece together a top 10 from what was the most popular or what was on every list or what was high enough on every list. But I'll go through that as we come to it. Don't panic. It's not a huge thing, but it'll hopefully be enjoyable to listen back to. So yeah, that should be all that. So how are you feeling then, Denise? You said you're feeling nice and Christmassy, hopefully, talking about movies.
Yeah, talking about Christmas movies makes you feel Christmassy. I'd just like to say I am the oldest out of the 2 years.
Yes. Yes, I should have said. So yeah, my older sister, my big sister, I think, as I often will say. But so
Christmas movies always make you feel very Christmassy, and they do a lot of Christmas countdown movies now, don't they? From the 1st right through to the 25th. Some channels do a Christmas movie every day now, don't they?
Yeah, I've seen that, and a lot of people will make their own little advent calendar of Christmas movies and stuff because there's a lot of them. But I should really have said as well, just for the purposes of making a succinct list for argument's sake, what we're classing as a Christmas movie here, it has to be a movie, so no kind of TV specials, no things that are like 20 minutes, half an hour long, things like that. So unfortunately, no Snowman or Snow Dog or Father Christmas or anything like that, because they wouldn't be classed as movies, and no kind of TV comedy specials or anything like that. It's got to be movies that at some point were released in the cinema, and but you probably haven't watched them in cinemas. You more than likely have watched them like us many years on either TV or video or DVD or whatever. So, because I know that's definitely how we used to watch things on Christmas, or we used to wait and see what was on specific Christmas Eves and Christmas days, didn't we, on the telly? So yeah, awesome, good. Well, we all have our favorites, so without any further ado, I'm just going to jump straight in then. Since you're the guest, I'll let you go first, Denise, and we'll start with your number 10 on your personal list. What's your number 10 Christmas movie?
It was very hard to make this list, I must say, because you kind of want them all to be number 1. But number 10 was the Christmas Chronicles.
Oh, that's a good choice. The Netflix movie with Kurt Russell playing Santa, isn't it?
Yes.
That's really a good choice. So we can talk a little bit about that, because weirdly enough, I remember watching that with you and the kids actually at your house the first time we watched it. So that was quite nice. But I will say, honestly, I think I preferred the sequel when it came out. I think it was last year, maybe the year before. Have you seen the Christmas Chronicles 2 out of curiosity?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
Oh, yeah. See, I like that one a little bit better, I think, but they're both good. And they're really good for considering they're like Netflix films and they have a bit of a hit and miss type record. They're really good, and he's really good in the role, isn't he, Kurt Russell? So that's
He is
good.
like the Christmas Chronicles 2 is the one with the little boy, isn't it? Well,
Yeah, the guy, the
little.
little kid that was in Deadpool 2, he's in there as the kind of, I want to say bad guy, but kind of, the antagonist, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a much larger role for Goldie Hawn in the sequel as well.
Yeah, definitely. But it was very touching. Yeah, it does. It pulls at the Christmas heartstrings, I think, that one, definitely.
It does. The one thing that I feel is weird about the first movie, though, is that bizarre scene with the elves, because those things just freaked me out. I don't know what the heck was going on with that.
Yeah, that was a bit bizarre, wasn't it?
It was just a bit. Yeah. Oh dear me. But yeah, that's all right. So that's become a bit of a Christmas tradition, has it, in your house already? After
yes, that's definitely one that we've watched a few times, the Christmas Chronicle. But I do like the memory of it because we all watched it together, like you say, me, you, Jessica, and Harry. So it's a nice Christmas memory one, yeah.
Oh, that's good. Good. I'm just having a look through, and I've got to say, spoiler alert, it's not on mine or Harry's list, this movie, unfortunately. So.
No, there you go.
But no, it is good. I definitely. Oh, well, there you go. Speaking of that, then we'll just jump onto that, and I'll just ask you for. Actually, do you know what? I'll alternate it a little bit, and I will give you my number 10, and we'll do it that way. Yeah, my number 10 movie, and again, you're right, it was difficult to make this list, and there was a load of things I'll probably mention in honorable mentions at the end, but there was tons of things that were on and off the list that didn't quite make it, or movies that I liked, but I didn't feel Christmassy enough or whatever. But in the end, I came up with a list of 10 after much debate, and my number 10 movie is Jingle All the Way, the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. It's a movie that, it gets some flack because I don't think it's necessarily a brilliantly made movie or all that good, but I do think it's really good comedically, and I think that the late great Phil Hartman is great as the kind of the guy who's trying to steal his wife, who kind of steals the movie in parts. But it also captures that feeling that I know I remember from many a Christmas in our youth when you were looking for the latest toy, be it Power Rangers or Turtles or whatever, and that became the kind of mad rush around Christmas. And it's kind of
Thunderbirds, Tracy Island on Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but that does become kind of all encompassing, and it's kind of it's amazing that it took so long to make a movie out of that. But they do make it really heartwarming and kind of give it that good ending instead of it being just about commercialization or whatever. And it's always good to watch Arnie, even when he's doing comedy. I know he's again, it's not the greatest acting in the world, but it's funny at least, isn't it? And it feels nice and Christmassy. So. Yeah, that would be the number 10 on my list. So we'll quickly move on to you again, then, Denise, and we'll ask you what was the number 10 on our Jessica's list then.
Number 10 on Jessica's list was Arthur Christmas.
Oh, that's a popular movie. A few of my friends have mentioned that as being a film that they just seem to have latched onto, and it's weird because I have seen it. I watched it for the first time a couple of years ago because I think it was like given away as a free digital Sky offer. So I watched it and it's good, but I just think it's one of those that because it's not from our youth, it's kind of like, well, it's good, but maybe if you're a kid growing up now, it's your movie and it might appeal to you a bit more. But yeah, it didn't do a lot for me, but I totally get it. I understand it's a very well made film and well kind of animated and everything. And obviously it's got a massively popular voice cast and everything in it. And yeah, it's quite modern and up to date. Yeah.
He just feels like you say. I think it is to do with what they remember though from their Christmases. Obviously, what we remember from our Christmas and what they remember from their Christmases are very different because obviously there's 26 years between me and Jessica. So it's obviously it's obviously going to be different. So it's just what they associate with Christmas, isn't it? Christmas. Yeah.
I think it's to do with the amount of times you've watched it as well, because I've only seen that film once. If I watched it again, I might start to appreciate it a bit more. But again, I watched it once and was like, it's good. I totally get it. I understand why it's popular and it's very well made. But yeah, I'm not a kid, so watching a movie that's blatantly a kid's movie, I think was a bit like, it's not going to have the same effect, is it? But even still,
No.
very good movie. And I know, like I said, it's very popular with a lot of my younger friends and stuff as well. So what about you? Have you seen that one as well, Denise?
Yes, I've seen it a few times. It's a family favorite at Christmas in our household.
I was going to say, it's probably a daft question. If the kids like it, you would have watched it because you'd have no choice, I assume, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's why it's one of Harry's favourites. I think it's just a one that stuck with him from when he can remember, Christmases that he can remember. So yeah, he loves it.
Oh, that's good, good. So speaking of our Harry, I'll get into his list now then, and I'll tell you his number 10. The number 10 on his list is The Santa Claus, with an E on the end. The movie about basically Tim Allen, who, this is a bizarre movie, who kills Santa Claus and then gets cursed to become him, which sounds ridiculous and sounds like the plot of a horror movie, but it's an actual movie. And it's kind of from our youth. It's from the 90s, if I remember correctly, but it's not something...
it is.
Yeah,
he accidentally kills Santa Claus.
Yeah. It's not like it's not like a murder spree or anything, but it's just one of those films that's really weird. And I think, again, it's not something that it just wasn't ever on our radar, and I've been put off because of the whole Tim Allen of it all. Not that I'm getting into that now, because happy episode. I don't want to get into it, but so it's put me off kind of watching it and going back to it since. But again, I know that it's popular, definitely. They've made 2 sequels, so it's obviously had something going for it, and it's got a bit of that kind of Christmas spirit to it, hasn't it? Because it's all about Santa, isn't it? You know what I mean? But it's also from that stable of 90s movies with the kind of divorced dads trying to find a way into their kids' lives. It's very Mrs. Doubtfire-esque, I think, at times as well. So
it is, definitely.
Yeah, but if there's not a time of year for schmaltz, then it has to be Christmas, doesn't it? So, so that's good. That's great. So that was our Harry's choice anyway. So I'll go back. I think we started with you, didn't we? So we'll go back to you, and I'll ask for your number 9, and then a little explanation about maybe why you like it, and a bit more about that.
Number 9 is The Grinch, which I know most people would probably put that near the top, but there's so many Christmas films. So
well, let's just clarify first which version you mean when you say The Grinch.
Well, I'm going to say the most recent one.
Right. That is just called The Grinch, because technically the Jim Carrey is How the Grinch Stole Christmas.
Yes, that's right.
And the original How the Grinch Stole Christmas, of course, would be on my list, but again, not a movie. It's a TV, like half-hour cartoon. So, but it's weird. There's been that many versions of this story, but well, I'll just give you a quick. We may as well do this at the same time, because my number 9 is also The Grinch, and the exact same version. We did not. I promise, we did not discuss this beforehand. The lists were all made independently and everything. But weirdly enough, that's a bizarre coincidence that it's also my exact number 9. The one with it's animated by the people. I think it's Illumination that make Minions and stuff, and Benedict Cumberbatch does the voice of the Grinch, and I just really like it. But what did you like about it anyway? Because we were talking about your list first of all. So.
I think it's probably the same as yourself. It's because obviously Christmas, he obviously comes round to the Christmases in your heart, doesn't he? So it's a real feel-good Christmas film, as in it really reminds you that Christmas isn't all about the commercial side, and it isn't all about the presents and rushing around and making sure you have everything just right for Christmas. It's actually about being together and the singing and being the love that surrounds Christmas. So that's why I like The Grinch.
Yeah, it's that lovely rhyme at the end, isn't it? Maybe Christmas, he thought, wasn't bought at a store. Maybe Christmas perhaps means a little bit more, which I think is the key message to it. And that's why I like it, because I think it might well have been the first version that I saw, because I never really watched the Jim Carrey one. And I was just totally in love with the writing, the prose of Dr. Seuss, because the film copies a lot of it, pretty much exactly, the rhyming couplets and stuff. And I was totally like, oh, this is really... And that's why... As I said, since then, I've got the original kind of cartoon from, I think, the 60s that was always on in America, I've been told from friends. And that's definitely my absolute favorite, not just because it's shorter, but because it obviously is just a straight adaptation of the book, and the message behind it and everything's really nice and really sweet. But I do remember being impressed with the new version, because it has that kind of... it has humor and stuff that pads it out that really works for me, but with the kind of... The Grinch's relationship with his dog, for example, stands out to me, and gives you some good sort of physical humor and stuff, as well as the Christmassy elements of it. And I think, Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, actually did a really good job playing the voice of the Grinch and selling that as well, because it's a fine line. You've got to be kind of hateable but lovable enough that you can be loved at the end, kind of thing. So yeah. Awesome. So we'll go back to you then, and I'll ask you for our Jessica's number 9 then, Denise.
Well, Jessica's number 9 is the Polar Express.
I thought that might come up.
Yeah.
Go ahead then, tell us about the Polar Express, because it's not a film that's on my radar a lot, but I know you guys like it. So
No, it is a family one again in our house. It is a family favourite at Christmas. We even have it in 3D, I must say.
all right, okay.
We've been to a few events. This is the film that pubs and things tend to put on at Christmas and sell tickets, and you go along and you get your hot chocolate, and there'll be a conductor who will pretend to obviously stamp your ticket that you get, like on the actual Polar Express film, and they'll try to make it very much like the Polar Express. But for me, it's just the Polar Express it's just so heartwarming, because again, it has a little bit of everything going on. So there's a little boy who doesn't really believe in Christmas because he's never really had any presents, and he's obviously they portray him as the little boy who's obviously not as well off as the other people on the train, because they're all on a train. And it's just at the end, obviously, he does get a present, and they all become friends on the train as they go through to the North Pole. And there's a little bit of action when the train obviously derails and things. So yeah, it's a really really good feel good Christmas film, and it has obviously singing and a big Christmas tree. So
Yeah.
and it has hot chocolate as well, a proper song with the hot chocolate, and Tom Hanks does a really good job of playing the voiceover. Sorry, on the conductor. For me, he really makes the film. So yeah, it's a really good Christmas film.
That's good. That's good. Right. Well, this is not going to take a lot of going into. As I say, I can't really discuss the Polar Express because, and I'll say this quietly, I've never actually seen it, so I couldn't say whether it's good or. I'll get around to it one of these years. Maybe it's even this year. We'll see if I get a chance to. But yeah, I've never actually seen it. But I'm reliably informed by you guys that it's good. I know it's one that you always watch as a family, the 4 of you as well. So. But yeah, never saw it myself. Always was a little bit freaked out by the CGI Tom Hanks of it all, you know. But, so again, yeah, as I was saying, this one won't take much getting into because we've kind of already talked about it. But our Harry's number 9 is the same as my number 10. It's Jingle All the Way again. So it probably appeals for all the same reasons. We are suckers for, you know, the geeky toy. We've probably both lived that, even though we're very far apart in age. We've both had that where we wanted a toy off our parents or off Santa that Christmas, and you know, we wanted the latest thing, and it was all superhero based and that. Plus, it's just funny and it's just heartwarming and sentimental. So, I presume you must have known that our Harry liked that one.
Yes, I knew that it was the one that he liked. Yes.
Oh, bless. That's good. Okay, we'll move on then to, we'll start with the number 8 and we'll begin with yours. Denise, what's number 8 on your list?
Well, we're not going to be talking much about it because it's Jingle All the Way.
So that's 3 lists it's appeared on so far then.
Yeah. Again, as you've just said in regards to Harry, again, it's a one that we've watched as a family at Christmas time. And as a parent myself, it does really resonate with yourself about what it's like at Christmas when you want that special toy for your child and you can't get one anywhere. And yeah, it is a stress and a worry, but that's not what it's all about. And yeah, so I think we've talked enough about Jingle All the Way though. So
yeah, I don't really want to spoil the ending, but I like that at the end it's not even about getting the toy. It's more, like I said, it's from that same stable of 90s movies where it's more about wanting his dad to be there for him, isn't it, more than anything? But it's nice and it's a sweet message. But yeah. Okay, we've talked enough about that one, I guess. So I'll give you my number 8 film. And my number 8's a very recent movie. Not that The Grinch wasn't, but this is quite recent, as in I think it's only a year or 2 old. The number 8 on my list is the movie Last Christmas with Emilia Clarke and Henry Golding, which I remember we went to see at the cinema when it came out, weirdly enough.
We did.
But yeah,
my tear ducts were definitely working.
Oh, it's very emotional. The end of it is absolutely, it's a good punch. It's a great movie all the way through because it's got that sort of, like, I've never really been one for the romantic comedy type films. I've never been into Love Actually or any of them types of things, but this one, I just thought it was really good. I thought the supporting cast were great. Michelle Yeoh as the kind of woman that calls herself Santa is really funny. And Emma Thompson is just, again, heartbreaking and really powerful in her role. The leads are great, and the very last sort of twist at the end, which I won't spoil, is just... it's heartbreaking in that very emotional way, but the movie itself, I think, just comes off as very Christmas and all the emotion of the season. And I was very impressed when I saw it, even though it's very new. So obviously the fact that it's number 8 after only being out for a couple of years shows you that I must have really enjoyed it, which I did. So yeah, that was mine. And like I said, I know that we saw the pictures together. I think we both enjoyed, but we were both very emotional at the end part of it, weren't we? So
yeah, it's still, although it is emotional, it is a film that will stay with you. If you've never seen it and you think now that you're listening to the podcast, oh, that's something I've never really thought of watching. Because like Michael, you might not have been interested in thinking of the romantic side if you've read a little bit about it. But honestly, it is a film that will stay with you for lots of different reasons. And it definitely is so powerful. It really is. And it does still make you feel Christmassy, although it's emotional. It does still make you feel what Christmas is all about.
Definitely, it has a good message as well. Not even just the central kind of shocking idea, but the overall message of like acceptance and being there for each other. That I think we need more of these days. That's very kind of Christmas appropriate. So yeah, I definitely recommend give it a watch at least once, maybe, and see if it's your kind of thing. It might be too schmaltzy for you if you're a bit cynical, but I think it's a very made and a very good movie. Paul Feig, I think, directed it. So yes, very good movie. So right, I think we're up to our Jessica's number 8 film now, if you've got that.
Yeah, Jessica's number 8 is The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Ah, nice. And I remember this was the only one you sent me that you were questioning because you weren't 100% sure it was a Christmas movie, were you?
That's right. And to be honest, I can only remember, I'm going to be really honest, I can only remember a little bit about it because I read the book. It was the book that interested me. You know, when I was younger, I really loved to read, didn't I? And it was the book that kind of sticks with me, not the film. But
obviously it didn't stick with you because the book has... Yeah, you know that I was obsessed... Well, you of all people know that I was obsessed with the Chronicles of Narnia, and I've read and reread them over and over. So I do remember... Well, I've seen the film obviously as well, but I remember that one of the key plot points does involve Santa Claus. So you kind of have to call it a Christmas movie because, like I said, it's key to the plot that to get to the last battle. It's Christmas, and Santa Claus is the one that gives them gifts of like a bow and arrow and a sword and whatever their particular kind of skills are supposed to be. So, and obviously it all takes place in like a snowy forest and whatever else, and it's just got that Christmas feel of that like fairy tale idea, which I think you can't discount that as well. So I definitely would give that to our Jessica as allowed as a Christmas movie.
I was quite shocked that it was one that she has put up there because it's not something we have watched a lot as a family. So she's obviously got really nice memories of it, but I don't, not from watching it with us. It's obviously a one that she's maybe watched with her friends over the Christmas time, or that she's just discovered herself recently, because it wasn't the one that I was expecting to see on there. But then that's nice because, you know, it's her list, isn't it? It's her choices. So that just proves that obviously I'm not governing what they have on their list.
Yeah, but I mean, she might have seen it recently because I do know that I'm pretty sure it's on Disney Plus. So she might have just come across it like browsing on there because I know they recommend certain Christmassy films and stuff. So maybe that's what it was. But yeah. It's a very good movie as well. Well, it's kind of a shame that we still haven't had a proper version of all of the Chronicles of Narnia because I like the 3 movies they did come out with. But it was they only did, I think, book volume number 2, 4, and 5, which was weird. But yeah. Not anything to do with Christmas, but my favorite is still Voyage of the Dawn Treader, the 5th book and the 3rd movie. So do watch it if you get a chance. Speaking about things that are questionably Christmassy, but I know people will disagree with me on this. Number 8 on our Harry's list is the movie The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I have really tried. I've tried this every year for the last 3 years, and every single time I'm just not that in love with it. It doesn't spark anything with me, and it's weird because I know it's not directed by Tim Burton, but it's produced by him and it's his ideas and stuff. And I like so much of Tim Burton's other stuff. I like Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and obviously the Batmans and stuff. So it feels weird not to like this, but every time I've watched it, I've just ended up drifting off or not paying attention or getting a bit bored with it. But I know there is the debate as well of, you know, is it a Halloween or a Christmas movie? It's definitely a Christmas movie, I personally say.
Again, I think that's the one that is more for the younger audience, because obviously I have watched it with the children, but I know I don't enjoy it as much as they do. So I definitely think it's hit the targeted audience of the younger audience, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to like it. That's the thing. And like I say, I've tried it so many times, and I'm like, I totally get it, and it's everything I like. And I even like the Corpse Bride, which is the other like Tim Burton stop motion animated type of movie. But yeah, for some reason, Nightmare Before Christmas, it just doesn't quite connect with me, and I don't know what it is that's that barrier. Maybe it is just like you see, I was too old when we first watched it, and it never quite got in there for me. So oh well, never mind. I know a lot of people that would have it as their number one, though, that really like do like connect with it and have it. You know, mainly I think because it's not as schmaltzy. So I think it's the people that want to be all like, yeah, Christmas is good, but it's all we're all hard and goth and whatever else as well. So
Yeah.
but yeah, anyway, we'll move on from my ramblings, and I will ask you for, we're up to number 7, aren't we? So what's your number 7 film then?
Right, well, my number 7 we're not probably going to talk a lot about because we've talked about it quite a bit. It is of course Arthur Christmas.
Ah, okay, fair enough. So it's from you like as well as the kids, obviously then.
Yeah, that's definitely a family favourite, as was said before. So yeah, that's my number 7.
Number 7. So it's fair to say you averagely like it. It's not like one of the top ones because it's obviously not from our youth, but number 7 still a good score. So you obviously like it. So that's good. Good. Yeah. Well, lots of happy family memories, I assume, recently with that one. So that makes some sense.
Definitely.
My number 7 is a film that I'm sure will also probably come up again. But this is some people might well have issue with me having it this low, but my number 7 is the movie Elf, which I like a lot, but there's films I like more. And like I say, it was hard to make this list, so it feels like, even looking at it now, it feels like 7's a low place for it, but there's nothing above it that I would knock down. Because it's not that I don't like Elf at all. I love it. I think it's such a good movie. It's a modern Christmas classic, and you know, I have the Blu-ray of it, and I love, obviously, any Will Ferrell comedy is great. He's fantastic in it. I like the kind of the references to the past Christmas stop motion of it, and the sort of schmaltzy, I've said that word a lot, but you know, the sort of Christmas spirit of it all, and the way that it ends with, you know, having to have people feel the Christmas spirit to get to save the day in the end without spoiling too much in case anyone hasn't seen it. But yeah, it's also family friendly, but with that kind of zany Will Ferrell comedy shtick as well, and it's just so likable. There's something about it that it immediately became like quotable, and it's just what you always, or what you now anyway, think of as being Christmassy, even though it's not that old of a movie. So yeah, it's definitely my number 7.
Yeah, it is such a good movie, and it is the one that nearly every household, I would imagine, has seen, and it is the one that obviously people refer to at Christmas time, especially now that with the little elves, you know how everyone does the little elf on the shelf.
Yeah.
That, I think that obviously people who maybe hadn't seen it before, once Elf on the Shelf became a big thing in the UK, then they probably would have then watched Elf because of Elf on the Shelf. And yeah, I think it's huge, isn't it, the film, and obviously the Elf on the Shelf helps that, I think.
Yeah, I think it's become kind of one of the ones that it's cool to like as well, because it's the same. It's directed by Jon Favreau, who obviously went on to do like the Iron Man movies and the Mandalorian and stuff. So it's got some nerd cred from that, but it's also because it's Will Ferrell and it's a comedy and it's not a straight up like romance or you know, fairy tale type thing just on its own. I think there's a bit of a cool factor to it that got it some popularity. But I think beyond that, it's just a really good, well-made movie. And Zooey Deschanel's good in it as well. I should say, because she never gets any credit for that. So so yeah, that's fair enough. So I'll ask you for our Jessica's number 7 then next, please.
It is Mickey's Once Upon a Christmas.
Ah, yes, I remember discussing this with our Jessica because she couldn't remember the name of it when she was making her list, so she did ask. So I did kind of have the little spoiler of knowing this was going to be on her list somewhere as well. Not something I'm familiar with. How about you?
Yeah, it's definitely a one that was watched a lot when they were very young. So I'm talking from them obviously being, say, 2-3-year-old. And it was just a classic every year that they always wanted to watch. And they wanted to watch it a lot with the run up to Christmas, and it just is very, very Christmassy, and I think it's obviously something that they both will remember from being young, basically. But yeah, it is a good film. It's geared towards a younger audience, and if you've got children, you'll probably have seen it. If you haven't got children, you'll probably never watch it.
I was going to say it's I've never really even heard of it. I vaguely knew the title, which is how I was able to help our Jessica, because I've seen it, and again I've seen it on Disney Plus, like in passing. But just if you could then, because I know I personally have no semblance of what it's about. So could you give just a very quick, brief discussion of what it's about without spoiling anything, in case anybody hasn't seen?
I think it's hard to kind of say what it's about without spoiling it. Without kind of, I don't know, without kind of giving too much away. Obviously, because it's Mickey Mouse, so I
think we can safely say it's like Mickey and the Disney characters, and it's set at Christmas, and that's probably all that most people need to know, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, because I think if you know Mickey Mouse episodes, you know that if I say too much, you'll give it away, kind of thing. I mean, I didn't know until recently when I was looking into it, because we were talking about it for starters. It's would have probably only just made this list, Michael, because it's only 1 hour 10 minutes. So I was looking in, I knew it wasn't that long, so I looked into it, and it was 1 hour 10 minutes, and it was actually initially released in 1999. Which
I thought it was older than that.
Yeah, well, I didn't actually think it was that old. I think because you see, Jessica and Harry were young when they watched it. But I'm just going to sum it up as it obviously sheds light on the true meaning of Christmas, which is pretty much most of the films that we've talked about. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, it is like I say, it is a really good film, and it's obviously animated, so it is geared towards the younger. And Walt Disney obviously always make a really, really good film, don't they? So, I mean, for starters as well, obviously you've got your big character. I'll just talk a little bit about the characters and stuff, so rather than giving the plot away. Obviously you've got your big characters like Donald Duck in there, and Scrooge, and Huey and Louie, and Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse. So they're all in there. It's a very Christmassy film. Yeah, it really
it's pure is. Disney then, obviously, with the main characters, I guess. That makes sense.
Yeah, it is very, very pure Disney, and it's about gifts and Christmas.
Yeah, kiddie stuff, really, isn't it? It's weird how if you say that, saying that it was released in 1999, that was the year that our brother was born. And yet, I don't know if he's ever really seen this movie. I would have to ask him. He's never mentioned it, but
I would say Sam has. I think I can remember him watching it when he was younger. I really do. I actually maybe think that was maybe why Jessica and Harry have watched it. Maybe his mum had said to them about it. But there is some singing in it as well, obviously, as in that's part of the plot as well. Is obviously the singing. So
similar to other Disney stuff that we'll probably be talking about later. Okay, awesome. I'll move on to our Harry's list then, and I'll tell you that his number 7 is a movie that I'm pretty sure is going to come up again, but it's the lowest on his list, and it's the movie Home Alone, which absolute Christmas classic, isn't it? Really, I mean, it's
it so really good. Is.
I think this is probably one of our favorites as well, without wanting to spoil the list. We're not giving away anything, but we'll say that we both like it probably, and lots of good memories with this one, because I do know it came out in 1990, so I would have been 8, you would have been 10, so it's the perfect age, I think, for it as well.
It is a very Christmas film, and it's a traditional Christmas film, isn't it? That every family would have sat around to watch together. Home Alone, it really is. So,
I know I've definitely sat with our Harry when he's been watching it, but it's one of those that transcends generations, because like I said, it was probably arguably our generation when we were younger that got the movie, and yet his generation watching it now can still appreciate it, even though it's not really modern or up to date. There's a lot of stuff in there that you're like, well, it wouldn't work nowadays or whatever, because you can't, you've got mobile phones and internet and all this, and would anybody be left on their own? But kids don't care about that stuff. They just see it as a fun adventure, and Macaulay Culkin's brilliant in it, obviously, absolutely star performance in that movie, and it's just funny and fun, isn't it? And yet the ending is just pure, again, Christmas tugging at the heartstrings. So
awesome. It is, and it is so funny, and when you think he had his own little party, so he must have knew that COVID was going to happen in a few years' time, wasn't he?
A few years, a couple of decades later or so, probably 30 years actually, more like.
But he kind of did have his own party made his own people and everything, didn't he, for to have a party? So
Well, yeah. We'll be talking about that again, though, I'm sure, at some point in the rest of these lists.
Yeah.
But we'll go to your list anyway next, and I'll ask for your number 6. We'll try and move it along a bit here.
The number 6 on my list is The Muppets Christmas Carol, which obviously is a classic from when
That's
we were
criminally low.
Yeah. I knew you would say that because I know obviously it's a one that we watched every year when we were younger, and it's a Christmas film that obviously reminds me of when I was young. Yeah, so I knew you would be disappointed that it was number 6.
Well, 6 is still pretty good. Obviously, it shows that you do like it, and you've obviously watched it. I know you've watched it a few times because I would have been the reason, but obviously you've watched it, I assume, since with the kids or off your own back as well. So
yeah.
Awesome. I don't want to get too much into it because that one, might come up again later. We'll talk about it a bit then, but okay, it's good to know that you like it as well, and you've obviously watched it a few times, so very good. My number 6 is kind of continuing a theme from Harry's, because my number 6 is Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, which I always get really upset when, well, not upset, but I always get a little bit annoyed when people are talking about their top Christmas movies and Home Alone comes up all the time and Home Alone 2 never does. And yet, for me, it's just as good. Yes, it's a repeat of a lot of the same beats and whatever else, but it's just as good of a movie. It has the same kind of Christmassy message, but with the kind of homeless lady instead of the guy that they're all frightened of and whatnot. And it's got all the same. But for me, because it's the one that hit when I was, again, at this point, I would have been 10 or 11, so I probably would have responded to it more. But I just love all the nonsense about like Tim Curry as the hotel bellhop that he's tricking and everything, and thinking that there's somebody in the room and scaring them off and everything, and using the tape recorder thing to record his voice and slow it down to sound like his dad. And I think some of the jokes in the sequel are better than the jokes in the first one. It's not as original and it's not necessarily as Christmassy, though I think it probably, you could argue it definitely is. I mean, it's Christmas in New York, and yes, again, it stretches credibility that he's in a completely different place, but the same burglars are chasing after him, and he has access to a complete house that's halfway built and does stuff that would have killed any sane or any regular person outside of this movie. I mean, the fact he's dropping bricks and construction work on these guys, he'd be in, juvie for second-degree murder in reality, but you've got to look at it as kind of the slapstick nature of it, and I think because it had to go a bit bigger because it is a sequel, but I think it's a great movie. As I say, it's definitely deserves to be my number 6, so that's where it's ended up for me. So yeah, I thought we'd gotten higher on the list than that, but there you go. So what about our Jessica's number 6 then?
Well, Jessica's number 6 we've already talked about, and it is Home Alone.
Okay, we just talked about that, so that's fair enough. Yeah. So the first Home Alone, I'm guessing, then she hasn't got a lot to say about the second one.
No.
I wonder why that is, with everybody when it comes to their lists.
I don't know, but no, just Home Alone, I'm afraid.
That's weird how Harry had it as his number 7 and she had it as her number 6. So they both kind of like it equally the same, almost the same way. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, our Harry's number 6 is the movie Nativity, which, again, I must confess I've not seen. I know it's quite a recent movie, although, again, they've made like 2 or 3 sequels.
Yeah.
But I haven't really seen it. I don't know if you have, Denise. Can you tell us anything about it?
I have seen Nativity. Well, we've seen all of them, but Nativity is obviously... It's about a teaching assistant. This is how it all starts. It's about a teaching assistant who is a little bit silly, really, but most teaching assistants are. I used to be one, so you have to be. So yeah, he works in a school, and I don't want to give too much away because obviously the whole plot is obviously silly things happen on each nativity. Silly things happen and things go wrong, and they're obviously trying to get the nativity done, but things happen along the way.
Yeah, well, it's obviously about a school nativity, which is not something that's been explored in films a lot, and I think it might be more of an English thing because I know they are like British movies, so maybe it's something that we do more than the Americans, maybe, or whatever. Because obviously, I remember when we were younger, So yeah, but it's nice that religious aspect gets its way into a film, I suppose, as well, because
it does, and it's very funny. But it is religious, and there is a theme of Christianity within it. But
of course, it's a nativity, so naturally, yeah.
But it is very funny. He is really funny, and it's just really, really, really Christmassy, but also funny at the same time.
Yeah. Christmas can be a funny time.
If you work in a school as well in any capacity, you'll obviously relate to it really well. I think that's why I like them.
Fair enough. What are the child actors like in it though? Because that's where you can sometimes either make or break a film like that, isn't it? So are they good or iffy?
Yeah, they are. They're all really, really good, and they play the parts really well, and they're really believable in that part. Especially as I say, because I've worked in a school, and you know what such and such who's going to be an angel is going to be like, and you kind of expect them to be exactly like what they are in the film. So yeah, it's very believable.
Okay, cool. So we're up to number 5. We're roughly halfway through the list. So we'll start with you again, and I'll ask you for your number 5 then, Denise.
Well, strangely, my number 5 is Nativity 3. Dude, where is my donkey?
Right. How bizarre is that? Yeah. Why number 3 then out of all of them?
Well, no, just because it is so funny, because obviously they lose the donkey, and the whole film is them trying to find the donkey, who was obviously meant to be in the Nativity, and it is absolutely hilarious. It's just a really funny Christmas film, and you can just imagine if it happened in a real school, Ofsted coming in and them all looking for this donkey, and they can't find it anywhere. Like, you would even be allowed a real donkey anyway.
I have to say that does sound like a film that they came up with the title first and then decided to fit a plot around something they thought sounded funny. But never mind. If you say it's good, I'll take your word. As I say, I haven't actually seen any of them, but I know there is at least 3. And like I say, I know it's got a lot of British, like the best comedy talent and whatever in it. So yeah, because that one, is that the one that has Catherine Tate and David Tennant in, or is that one of the earlier ones?
No, that is the one, I do believe. Yes, Nativity 3, yeah.
Oh, fair enough. Cool. So we'll have to wait and see if Nativity 2 makes it onto anyone's list then, I guess. But yeah, that's fair enough. My number 5 movie then, just to move us to it, is a film that, again, as I'm looking at the list, it seems really low considering what it means to me, but my number 5 is the film Santa Claus the Movie, which I know we know because it was, again, one of the ones from our childhood that we watch every year that I still have to watch religiously, OCD style, every year, either on Christmas Eve or just before. And it's a film that I know objectively is not good. Certainly in the second half it isn't. But because we've watched it every year for as long as I remember, and because it just feels so Christmassy, it's a film that's attached to my heart in that real way, so I can't not have it on my list. And I think number 5 is probably as high as it can justifiably go, but it's still, it means a lot more to me than perhaps that number would represent, I think. And I think it's a very good movie. I could talk a lot about it. I think the fact that the first half is very fairy tale like, and it's like the origin of Santa Claus, I think the first half works really well. And I have spoken to people since who say, even if they didn't like the movie, they acknowledge the first half is great. And you can see the influence of the director, because it's a guy who was working on, it's like produced as well by guys that were working on like Superman. And there's, to me, the start of the movie is very like those 70s Superman movies, the mystical origins and then finding a hidden fortress in the snow and everything. And it's got that kind of feel to it, but with the Christmas fairy tale rather than the superhero side of it. And, obviously everyone's great in it. And Burgess Meredith appears as the old Santa who played the Penguin in Batman as well. So lots of connections there. But yeah, mainly it was just, and I think most of my memories are from that first half, and it's just how it felt like the bright colors and the toys and the elves and the fun of Christmas. So that's why it's number 5.
And Santa Claus was making the toys, wasn't he? Which obviously is the message from what Santa Claus used to obviously do years and years and years ago. So it feels very real, I think.
That's the thing. It's very much the traditional Christmas, but like that you don't see a lot of these days, but it's on like film and it's captured, and that's why I think the film kind of does fall apart when it then fast forwards to what was the present day at the time it was made, which is like the 80s, and it's all about consumerism and the elf trying to make the flying cars, and it just gets really bizarre and weird when it tries to go modern day and do that part of the story when it could have just been the ancient story of Santa, I guess, and it would have been cool. So but, that's fair enough. So what about our Jessica's number 5 then? What would that be?
Jessica's number 5 is Elf.
Oh, okay. Well, we've talked about Elf. So.
Yeah, we've talked about Elf, but yeah, I'm again imagine it's because it's a one that we'll watch every year at some point at Christmas.
Yeah, and she obviously finds it funny, I presume, and has that kind of charm, doesn't it? So that's good. That's fair enough. It's good to know that it's liked. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that might be a film, maybe one of the only ones that ends up on all 4 lists, but I don't want to spoil it just in case. But I know that, yeah, fair enough. So that's Jessica's number 5. Our Harry's number 5, we've also already talked about. It's The Grinch, which we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure which version, because I don't know if our Harry knows the difference in the titles, but I have to presume he means the newest one, because that's the one that's just called The Grinch.
I haven't seen the older one. I don't think I've ever seen the older version.
Right, fair enough. Yeah, well, I know that we did watch the new one together, and I think we all liked it, so I have to presume it's that one. And once again, like I say, I do recommend it. I know there's people that would say it's not great, but for me, I think it's brilliant. And especially if you've got a family, I think it hits that sweet spot of being funny and fun for the kids, and yet having that really cool Dr. Seuss message behind it as well. So there you go. The Grinch, again, popular. Okay, we'll move on to number 4 then, and I'll ask you for yours first of all. That's how we're doing it. So there we go.
Yeah, I think we'll be chatting less and less about the films though, because my number 4 is Last Christmas.
Oh wow, okay. I didn't expect it to be on your list, let alone that high, but that's fair enough. Excellent.
Yeah.
What did you like about it then? Let's get into it.
As I said before, I think it's just that it's so emotional, but also it's very Christmassy. The Christmas message is there. It is heartbreaking, but it's just a film that's so memorable and will stay with you. If you haven't seen it and then you watch it, you'll never forget it.
Yeah, fair enough. I haven't rewatched it, mine, but I think I would love to, and it's got that kind of feel to it, and it's not something you can watch any other time, because I think it just has that Christmas sense to it, really, doesn't it? But yeah, that's fair enough.
Again, it's one of those films though where you can't say too much without giving it away, can you? Really?
That's the thing, yeah. And I think it even seeing that there's something to give away, I think gives something away, because people kind of expect things then. But I think, yeah, just go into it, just thinking of it as a Christmas movie, and along the lines of like Love Actually, and then see what happens to you when you're enjoying it, maybe. But yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to spoil it for other people, because we didn't know how the film was going to turn out, because obviously we were lucky, and I do believe we went maybe on opening day. I don't think there was.
It wasn't that early, but it was within the first week or two for sure. Yeah.
Well, I can't remember seeing any spoilers or anything anyway before we went, so we got to experience the full experience, I feel. So that's why I don't want to spoil it for anyone else.
Yeah, there's lots in it. I mean, we should see it. It's not like a like a Sixth Sense or whatever, where it's made by the twist and not a lot else happens or whatever else. Not to say that there even is or isn't anything. It's a good film throughout. I enjoy it. Like I say, I think the supporting cast are good. I think it's got that kind of Christmas charm, and the 2 leads are obviously attractive, but also really good. So yeah, awesome. That's good to see it on your list. So that's fair enough. My number 4 is a movie that I don't actually think you've seen, and it's not one from my childhood, but it is a film that I've come to love, and that's the film Scrooged with Bill Murray.
No, I have seen it.
Oh, you have? Okay, I didn't know that. I know that we didn't. Obviously, it's not really appropriate for children, so it's not one from my childhood, but it's one that I saw, I think, for the first time as a teenager, and since I did, it's obviously a take on A Christmas Carol, as a lot of these types of films are. But because it's Bill Murray, who is hilarious and, doing all of his improvisation and whatever as well. It's modern and up to date, so it does give you that same message that we've talked about, which is the commercialization of Christmas versus the point. And, you can be rich and still be a bit of an a-hole, and it's not about what you give, it's more about what time you give. And, he's basically a modern day version of what Scrooge would be, except he would be, television executive trying to, exploit Christmas or whatever, and yet gets visited by the 3 ghosts, who are played by 3 brilliant comedians who, show him the error of his ways, but in that kooky way. And again, directed by Richard Donner, who directed, among other things, Superman that we've mentioned, and Lethal Weapon, and a bunch of other, the Goonies, and loads of great movies. And I think it's a more adult take on A Christmas Carol, but it also is, to me, really funny, and still ultimately has that Christmas message without without that layer of cynicism that you might necessarily expect. So I think definitely a movie I would recommend if you've never seen it. Although, yes, it is very 80s. So it does look dated and of its time, I think, a little bit as well. So Awesome. Okie doke. Do you want to move to Jessica's number 4 now then?
Yeah, Jessica's number 4 we've talked about quite a bit. It is The Grinch.
Oh, so that's 3 of us, no, 4 of us that have the Grinch on our list then.
Yeah.
Jessica completes the 4.
It does.
That's fair enough. Yeah, so again, we have to presume it's the Benedict Cumberbatch one then, but yeah, that's cool. Awesome. I think us watch that together is probably a large part of the reason why it's on all 4 lists, but
I agree.
Yeah, that's cool. I think Jessica might be the one that has it the highest at number 4 then, but that's good to know that she likes it and enjoyed it when we watched it. That's good. The number 4 on Harry's list we've also already talked about, and that is the Polar Express.
Yeah.
Which, as we say, obviously it means a lot to you lot as a family, so that's why it's on his list as well. But we've discussed it at length that I haven't seen it, and you've kind of discussed what it's about and why it's good, and the kind of the real world versions of Polar Express that feed into it, and how it represents Christmas to the younger people maybe that way, and it's definitely, I think, a family experience, isn't it? So yeah, that's awesome. Great. So we'll move on then. And what is your number 3?
Well, my number 3 we've also talked quite a bit about, and it is Elf.
Okay. It's going to keep happening, I think, isn't it? Now that we're getting toward the top of the list. So, what do you like about Elf? Because I don't know if we actually got into your explanation.
For me, I like that when he obviously goes to stay with his dad, and how he obviously wants to be part of the family, and for me, it's how the relationship develops then between him and his stepmom and his dad, and obviously his brother, and then the whole family. For me, Elf shows that family at Christmas is so important, because it all happens obviously around Christmas time, where he finds out about his dad, and then he goes looking for him, and so yeah, it's for me, it's the family side of Christmas in the Elf story that I like.
Fair enough, and it gives us an excuse to constantly send gifts every year of, Buddy the Elf being excited or saying that he knows Santa or whatever, and eating whatever that mess of blooming candy worms or whatever it is that he eats.
Yeah.
But we haven't even talked about the central idea, which is the ridiculousness of like thinking he's an elf even though he's like 6'2" or whatever, and the daftness of it. But they do use, I think, without milking that to being sick of it, they do some good, clever jokes, I think, with that, and the idea of it is obviously absurd as well, but it's kind of cool. So yeah, awesome. My number 3 I've also already talked about, and it is Home Alone. Yes, I know. I did say that I like Home Alone 2, and that some of the jokes are funnier, but yes, I do have the first Home Alone 3 places higher because it's a classic. It's the one we watched. I remember watching it with multiple members of our family over the years. I remember, going back to when it first came out when I was 8, right up until watching it with, I think, you and the kids last year. Many a year we've watched it, and like I said, it's just so good. You watch it and you're like, the way that it's written by, I think, John Hughes actually, is so incredibly well done. There's some great humor in it, and like I said, Macaulay Culkin as a child actor is absolutely, you can see how he was just, he exploded on the scene around that time and became absolutely famous because he carries the film even though he's like 8 or whatever, and he's really funny. But there's also like a John Candy appearance out of nowhere that's funny for a little bit, and but yet at the very end, like I said, when it comes down to that heartwarming, like he just wants to be with his parents and his mum, much as we might make jokes about George, it must be a bit neglectful. It's that ultimate last moment, and then, as I said, without spoiling too much about it, although I kind of have, the idea of trying to become closer to the guy that they were all terrified of, the old man that they see owned, and not judging a book by its cover, and then what Christmas could mean for him, and that it's not just, as much as it is a movie about the slapstick ridiculousness of fighting off burglars with traps and stuff, there's more to it as well as that. So for me, that's why it makes number 3 and quite high on my list, obviously. Awesome. So what is our Jessica's number 3?
Well, we've talked about it already, and it is The Nightmare Before Christmas.
I knew that would be high on Jessica's list. I knew that she was a fan.
Yeah, awesome. She is, because I do believe you bought her the DVD one, yeah?
I did, yes, actually, yeah. But I know she likes that kind of thing anyway, because like I said, it has that kind of goth coolness type of vibe to it but it sneaks in the Christmassiness, I think, under that by being like, oh, we're not overly sugary sweet and whatever, and then it kind of is, but it tricks you that way, I guess. So much as it doesn't necessarily cool to me on that level. I can definitely see how it's liked, and you've got to weigh how well it's made. I mean, stop motion animation is a nightmare to do. So
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and I think that's probably why Jessica really likes it as well, because obviously she's quite into creative media and editing, and I think the film obviously really, really resonates with Jessica because I can imagine she will be seeing them putting the scenes together in her head because she likes to do that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's definitely a personal favorite of hers because of the editing. Yeah, definitely.
yes, I think it's something we could say about a lot of these films, but I also think the songs in that are fantastic as well. The songs I do love, I think it's just they're brilliantly done, and Danny Elfman knocks it out the park on every one of them. So yeah, brilliant little surprise musical, I think, movie as well. So yeah, that might be another reason why it's popular. But awesome. So again, our Harry's number 3 we've talked about at length quite recently. It's Elf. So there's not really much else we can say except that, again, that basically makes it on every list, I think, or at least 3 out of the 4. And
well, his 3 was the same as my number 3.
Well, there you go. That would be why you probably watched it together a few times. But I don't have Jessica's list in front of me, so I can't remember if it was on hers. It might not have made it.
It was number 5 on Jessica's. Yeah.
Well, that's obviously going to be popular in the top 10 then, because it was on literally all 4 lists, just like The Grinch. So awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to go into that more, but again, if you haven't seen it, definitely give it a look. It's a very good movie. So there you go. What is your number 2 then? Moving to that.
Again, it's a one we've talked about at length. It is, of course, a one from our childhood, Santa Claus the movie.
Yes. So, no, but come on, explain what it means to you and what you like about it, or what you... Because number 2 is very high, isn't it? So
it is, and as I said before when we were talking about it, it's the fact that obviously originally at the beginning, Santa Claus is how I imagined Santa Claus to be when I was younger. So I imagined him to be in the North Pole in the workshop making toys for every child in the world, and it really does make you feel that Santa Claus is so special and he's going to make all these toys for everybody. He's so magical. He really must be amazing. And every child is going to get a toy and he's not going to forget about anybody, and everyone's going to be happy and get a toy at Christmas.
Oh, and you obviously just love John Lithgow's incredibly subtle villain performance. It's so understated, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not at all. It's the complete opposite. He's an absolute pantomime villain, but it just works, I think, for a Christmas movie better than it would in any other place, because it's ridiculous. There's not a bit of that scenery that man hasn't chewed by the end of the movie. But I just remember when the elf's talking about, we're going to give it away for free, and then he's like, free? What do you mean? But yeah, I mean, it's bad, but in that way that it's still fun to watch. And like I said, even the bad parts of the movie are fun, and it's messy. So it's when you can be forgiven of these things. And like you said, it's hard to put into words, but that first half is just so everything that you picture Christmas in your head when you're a kid, isn't it? Really? So
that sums it up. That really does. It's how you had envisioned that Christmas would be. If you could go to the North Pole and actually see into Santa Claus's workshop, it would be exactly like that.
Yeah, and that's hard to capture, but I think that film does a perfect job. So awesome. My number 2 is a film that probably won't be on any other lists because everybody else is just a Philistine. But my number 2, and it was very close, is the film It's a Wonderful Life, which I could honestly rave about for days, but it's a film that I don't think gets a lot of a fair chance because it's really old and black and white. And I don't think, and it is long, I will say that, but I don't think that's fair because it is such a beautiful and such a great movie, and it takes you on such a ride to get you to that very end. And again, wanting to talk about it and say how great it is and how much I love it and why it's one of, I think, the best movies of all time without spoiling anything is difficult. But yeah, I mean, it's a Christmas movie and it is appropriate, I would say, for families, but yet the entire thing centers around a guy who basically doesn't want to live anymore. And, it starts off with almost a suicide attempt. And then it's kind of, this is what you've meant to the world. And even when things have been hard, this is maybe what you can't see. And like I said, I don't think there's a finer to this message than that at the very end. And yet, yeah, for the 1940s, it hits incredibly hard and it's so good. And James Stewart is absolutely astoundingly good in the lead as George Bailey throughout, and you've got to stick with it till the end because there's some rough going in the middle when things look really hard and when it seems like the bad guys have the upper hand and everything seems kind of hopeless, but it just makes the end, I think, all the more rewarding and all the more special when you finally get there. And don't be put off by the fact that it's black and white, but also don't look for the colorized version, because those are terrible when they've just done fake colorizing effects of that on them. But do seek it out if you have a spare couple of hours. And yeah, definitely, I think it's a film that everyone should at least watch once and see what it's all about, because it's so just really, really, really good. Yeah, fair enough.
It's not one I've seen, even though I must confess every year I do say to myself, because I know it's on TV every year somewhere, and I do say to myself every year, I'm going to watch it. I'm definitely going to watch it, and I've never actually gotten around to it. So I'm going to make a top of me list of things to do this year to make me feel Christmassy as well.
Fair enough. Well, I have the DVD if you ever wanted to borrow it. I'll tell you.
Oh, that's good.
That's how I watch it almost every year, because yeah, it's like I say, it's heavy going, and I think kids, like really young kids, might well find it a little bit boring, especially in the middle and stuff. But you can see why it's a classic and why it's a brilliant movie. And if you appreciate the underlying message, I think there's a lot to love there. So yeah. Awesome. What were we up to then? So that was my number 2. So then Jessica's number 2 would be next, wouldn't it? So what's second on?
Jessica's number 2 is the one that I haven't seen before either, and it is Love Actually. And I know she definitely has watched this recently, and it will be on probably Netflix or something. So but yeah, it's not a one that's ever really appealed to me. I'm sorry.
I've never seen it either.
No, and I know it's huge, Michael, with lots of people. I know lots of people really, really love it. They really rate it. I don't know, it's just not something that ever really appealed to me. It just didn't. So I'm sorry, I can't do anything about it because I don't know anything.
I'm surprised that it didn't appeal to you, as I would have think it would be the kind of thing that, and it's weird that I've never seen it, because even when you think of those types of films that you wouldn't think I had seen, I have seen like 4 Weddings and a Funeral and Notting Hill and stuff, mainly because of you, if I'm honest, because you've had like videos and stuff. But obviously, with never really having a partner at that time of year to watch it with or anything, and with, like I said, it always just struck me as, oh, it's going to be overly romantic comedy-ish, and who can be bothered with that? You know what I mean? That's not what the Christmas films are about, really, for me. But I can definitely see why it's popular. You know what I mean? It's Richard Curtis doing his thing, isn't it? So yeah, maybe one day I'll watch it just to see what all the fuss is about. But we'll see. But yeah, it's good that our Jessica has it as her number 2. Obviously, very, very popular. She must love it. So
yeah,
awesome. So this brings us all the way to the number 1s on the main lists then, believe it or not. So we'll keep to the same order then, and we'll ask you, what was your number 1 best Christmas film of all time then, Denise?
Well, my number 1 is the one we have talked about at length as well, but it is The Polar Express.
I've got to tell you what our Harry's number 2 film was.
Oh. Okay, so what was Harry's number 2?
I'll jump back to that. Sorry, I've got a little bit ahead of myself on that one. But so our Harry's number 2 film is Muppets Christmas Carol, believe it or not. It's a film that I know is popular, and obviously we know it was on your list, wasn't it? So
it was, yeah.
Don't think it was on Jessica's, but it makes it to number 2 on Harry's. I do remember him, again, when I asked them to make the list without them telling me anything about it, he was like, oh, would it be really embarrassing if I put Muppets Christmas Carol on there quite high? And I love that he loves it, and I love that it still has that kind of appeal to the younger generation. We'll go back to your number 1 then, which, as I say, The Polar Express, wasn't it? So
yeah, and as I say, it's because it really, as a mum, it really sits with me of Christmases and us all being together as a family, all sitting down to watch it with our blankets and our hot chocolate. And then the film just really makes you feel Christmassy. They're singing, there's a big Christmas tree, Santa Claus comes, he asks them to help. And the bell, even the little bell that, if you hear it ring, then you believe. And obviously everyone who knows anything about the Polar Express will know that saying, because they use it all the time, don't they? They churn it out all the time, that you believe if you obviously, you have if you can hear the bell ringing. So yeah, it's just there's lots of singing in it, and you know, there's some moments where you feel a little, it pulls at your heartstrings, and there's some moments where you really feel Christmassy and you really want to sing along, and you really want to decorate your tree and and really get in the Christmas spirit. Definitely.
That's fair enough. Well, that's one from your kids' childhood rather than ours, but yeah, it still obviously means a lot to you. But yeah, that's why it's not on my list, because like I say, I've never actually even seen it. So again, one day maybe. Okay, well, I'll move to my number one then, which, surprising nobody, is The Muppet Christmas Carol. It's really funny because I mentioned briefly to our mum earlier today when she rang that we were recording this and it was going to be about our Christmas films. And the first words out of her mouth were, "Oh, well, Muppets is your number one." And I was like, how do people know? It's just so transparent. But like I say, maybe it was just because it hit at that time in life when I was the perfect age. But I could, again, rave about this for hours on end. The songs are perfect. The performances are brilliant. The fact that it sticks so close to the text, even though it's a Muppets version, is brilliant. It's so heartfelt. It feels absolutely like the magic of Christmas. Like we were discussing with Santa Claus the movie, it captures something about that. Even when it's, you know, a daft puppet frog or whatever, it absolutely gets the spirit and the feel of it. And yeah, the story of A Christmas Carol, I think, is always going to be timeless. But why the Muppets version somehow appeals more, I don't know. Maybe it's just because, like I said, it was the one that drummed it into me since I was 8, 9, 10 years old, whatever it was, and I've watched it again every single year since, and I just think it's a beautiful, very Christmassy Christmas movie with obviously a brilliant message, which everybody knows. You know, you can't really spoil it. It's all about Scrooge being visited by the ghosts and learning the true meaning of Christmas and becoming the man he was meant to be. But yeah, it surprises me again that again for a Muppets film and a family movie, how blooming emotional it is as well. There's genuine, like, real sadness at times of how things might go, and a couple of almost sort of scary bits, you know, and it's got it all for me, and you can't fault the Muppets. I mean, they're just brilliant, aren't they? So yeah, definitely my number one, you know, mock if you will, despite the fact I'm almost 40, that my number one Christmas movie has the Muppets, but what the heck, why not? So there you go.
I think it is a classic though, and I think lots of people will have it up there on a list if they're happy with Christmas. Which brings us on to, actually, Jessica's number one is The Christmas Carol.
Yes, but I know that because, again, she discussed when she was making the list what to put on it, and I know that the one that she means by this is the Disney one, where it's Jim Carrey doing like motion capture, but it's animated. Yes. But it is obviously just the story of A Christmas Carol in much the same way as my number one, isn't it? So
yeah, and at the moment, The Christmas Carol, they are studying for English, so I think it's obviously brought it back to the forefront of our mind again, because obviously they're reading the book. So yeah,
I love the book. I mean, it's short, but again, I got it a few years ago, and I think I read it every year just because it's surprising, because all the films, like I say, stick so closely to the text that you feel like you know it anyway. But it's a really good book, and I think, again, the films, any film version, take your pick, you can't go wrong, really, you know. But
yeah. And I think now, when in the modern world, The Christmas Carol is very apt, as in sometimes people don't realize how they could help other people or until something happens. And then even down to last week with the storm, people don't realize that they've got the resources that other people don't have available, and they could help that person. And yeah, so it's an old tale. Well, they say it's a tale, don't they? It's an old tale, but it's so timeless. It really is.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, you can't possibly think that Charles Dickens, when he was writing it, knew that it would be something that, you know, century odd later, people would still be talking about as fresh and as impactful as it was, you know, but so good. I mean, it is Christmas personified, isn't it, in a lot of ways, that story. So that's awesome. Well, our Harry's number one is a film that we've also discussed at length. It's Arthur Christmas, so it obviously means a lot to our Harry that Christmas, which will surprise nobody. We've discussed why, obviously, that you guys have watched it and it's become your Christmas tradition. But yeah, I love it.
He did say to me when we were talking about it before. He didn't tell me that it was number one. I presumed it would have been on the list, but we were talking about it before, and he said it just sums Christmas up for him, as in how our Christmas goes. So obviously they make cookies and things, and that's what we do with Christmas. And yeah, I think when he watches it, he obviously reminisces about what we do with Christmas and how it's he feels that Arthur Christmas is very similar to our Christmas as a family.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, that concludes our main four lists. I will, come back to it and we'll try to make a list of a full top 10, putting them together as best we can. But before we do that, I did want to quickly go into the section which I call audience response. As I do every week, I always ask what people think about whichever film I'm reviewing. And this week I asked people for their top Christmas movies so that I could put together a kind of a top 10 based on audience feedback that the audience might like. And I was able to come up with a top 10, which I have got. But in the meantime, I did want to quickly shout out the honorable mentions from the audience. These were stories that got like maybe 1 or 2 votes, but weren't enough to make the top 10. And I'll just rattle through them in alphabetical order. So they were A Christmas Story, Batman Returns, Klaus, Get Santa, The Holiday, Iron Man 3, Love Actually, The Original Miracle on 34th Street, The Polar Express, The Santa Claus, Trading Places, and White Christmas. So a couple in there that we have mentioned on our lists, I think, as well. So, yeah, pretty cool. And I have to say, I probably should have said sooner I was going to mention some of my honorable mentions, but yeah, Batman Returns was one of mine because I think it's surprisingly Christmassy, and people will be shocked that Die Hard isn't on my list. It was so close. I had it in and out a number of times, but it just, for me, isn't super Christmassy, unfortunately. It's a great movie, don't get me wrong, but it's, questionable how Christmassy it is. And it was released in July. But yeah, I had a few of these others. I'll go through the list first and then see what else almost made my list. But so the top 10 from the audience then. Number 10 was Jingle All the Way, which, again, we've mentioned. Number 9 was National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which I have actually seen. I saw it for the first time a couple of years ago, and I have to say I didn't like it at all. I thought it was terrible, but again, maybe if I'd seen it younger, I would have liked it more. I don't know. Anyway, number 8, we've mentioned already, is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Number 7 is It's a Wonderful Life. Bit low, but at least it got mentioned, so I'm kind of happy about that. Number 6 is the movie Elf, as we've discussed. Number 5 is Home Alone, the original. The sequel doesn't make the list, unfortunately. Number 4 is Scrooged, which again was on my list, so there you go. Number 3 was another of my honorable mentions, Gremlins. Number 2 was Die Hard, and weirdly, the number 1, people agree with me. The number 1 with 1 vote separating it was The Muppet Christmas Carol. So there you go. That was the audience's top 10 list, and yeah, make of that what you will, but that was the feedback on my social media that I got from my various friends and those that bothered to reply. So thank you to everyone that did respond to that with your messages, and you know who you are. It's the usual suspects, I suspect, but awesome. So all that's left for us to do then is to try and come to some kind of consensus on an overall top 10 in the best way that we can. So we'll start by saying what was your number 10 something that we all had or not?
No, it wasn't.
So, okay. So my number 10 was Jingle All the Way. So was that on anybody else's list?
Yeah, that was on mine because that was number 8 on mine, and it was also it wasn't on Jessica's. It would have been on Harry's, though, I imagine.
Let me have a quick look. Yes, it was Harry's number 9 as well. So yeah, so that was number 10, number 9, number 8. So we'll keep that in mind. It might make it in, but we'll have to wait and see. Bear with me because I'm just quickly making a quick scribble of these. So my number 9 we'll start with then. It was The Grinch, which I think was on all 4 lists, wasn't it?
Yes, and that was my number 9 as well, yes.
Right, and that was Harry's number 5. So,
yeah. And it was Jessica's number 4.
Right, so 9, 5. So that's going to definitely make it on the list because it was on all 4 lists. So it's just a question of if anything else was on all 4 lists, really, isn't it? So I'll go through then and I'll try and think of things that I might remember as being on all of the lists. Did all of us have Elf on the list?
Yes.
So it was my 7 and it was Harry's 3.
It was my 3 and Jessica's 5.
Right, Elf. 7. Number 7, 3, 3, and 5. Right, so that's going to definitely make it in the list, probably above The Grinch, I would say, given the places. But yeah, fair enough. So did all 4 of us have Home Alone in?
I didn't have Home Alone, no.
Oh, okay.
Jessica did, but
okay.
I didn't.
Okay, fair enough. We'll talk about that when we hit the 3s then, maybe. So did all of us have the Muppet Christmas Carol? I don't think Jessica did she?
No, she didn't.
Oh.
I did, but Jessica didn't.
Darn. Oh, well, there you go.
She had
So the only...
Carol. She had the Christmas Carol, though, so...
Yeah, that's fair enough. Well, yeah, without spoiling it, then we have the top two, because there's only two that are on all four lists, if I'm not making a horrible mistake. So there you go. Okay, so my number 8 was Last Christmas, which I think was also on your list. Is that right?
Yes. That's just Jessica coming in. Jessica, say hello. Hi.
Typical teenager.
Yeah, she's getting the hairdryer.
Oh, okay, fair enough. So yeah, the only two of us had that, so we don't know if it'll necessarily make a list, but I'm writing it down. Don't worry, and we'll find out. So it was my number 8. What number did you have it again? 4, wasn't it?
Last Christmas I had it number 4, yes.
And obviously it wasn't on Jessica and Harry's list. So there you go. I know I was the only one that had Home Alone 2, so that might not make it. Santa Claus the movie, I know that you and I both had, and I don't think either of the kids did they? So...
Just you and I.
Oh, well, so that's Santa Claus the movie. It was my number 5 and your number 2, is that right?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
So that's going to be higher than that one. Claus 5 and 2. Home Alone, that we did say that was on 3 lists, didn't we?
It's on 3, it's just not on mine.
That's my number 3, Harry's number 7. And what is it for Jessica?
Jessica's number 6.
Right, so 3, 7, and 6. That's definitely going to make that. What's it not on your list for? I'm shocked.
I know. So am I, actually, now that I've
dare you? Fair enough. So then I think we might be starting to talk about mainly things that are on a couple of lists, if that. So I don't think anybody else had any others of mine that I can see. Oh, no, hang on. The Muppet Christmas Carol. It was definitely on 3, wasn't it, as well? Was that on your list? Yes.
The Muppet Christmas Carol's on mine, yes.
So it was my number 1, Harry's number 2, and what number was it for you?
6.
1, 2, and 6. So that's still, I would say that's still higher. Yeah, fair enough. So we've got a top, if my calculations are right, which they are, because they always are, I've got a top 7, so we just need another 3. So is there anything else that we've got in common on at least a couple of the lists?
Jingle All the Way was on mine and on Harry's, wasn't it?
Oh, I've already talked about that. Yeah, it's on 3 of them, and that's made it on somewhere for now.
Right.
There's things that aren't on my list that I think are on the 3 of yours, though. So like the Polar Express, for example. It's Harry's number 4, but what is it on you two's?
It's number 9 for Jessica and number 1 for me.
Right, so that's definitely 491. I would say probably just under the Muppets, maybe. Yeah, that seems fair. 4, 9, and 1. Okay, that's the 8th one on the list. Let me see through. We have, yes, Elf is there. Don't worry about that. I'm looking at Harry's list. So Harry had Arthur Christmas on. Did you or Jessica?
Yes, I've got Arthur Christmas as number 7.
Right.
Jessica had it as number 10.
Right. So Arthur Christmas. And it was Harry's number 1, obviously.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, boy. Let's see. We've got to put it above that, I think. Yeah, I think that would be where it goes. Christmas. 7, 10, and 1 is where it was on people's lists. So 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got 9. Let's see. Anything else that's on at least 2 lists? You and Harry picked different Nativity movies, unfortunately, didn't you?
We did, yeah, we did.
Oops. Nobody else had the Santa Claus. It was just Harry, wasn't it?
Just Harry, yeah.
Yeah, but the kids did both have Nightmare Before Christmas.
They did, yes.
Because it was Harry's 8. So what was it on Jessica's?
Number 3.
8 and 3. Oof, that still makes it in. Okay, fair enough. Nightmare Before Christmas. 8 and 3. Let's see, just to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. We've talked about Polar Express, Arthur Christmas, Muppets. Yeah. I do actually have, weirdly enough, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, I'd have an exact top 10. And it's in the perfect order because of our 4 lists have come together really blooming well to make a top 10. So
good.
Drum roll as I take us through them in reverse order to end the podcast. Then there we go. Number 10, the 10th best Christmas film of all time, according to this podcast, is Last Christmas. Hey. Number 9 is The Nightmare Before Christmas. Which, okay. Number 8 is Santa Claus the Movie. Very good. Number 7 is Jingle All the Way. Number 6 is Home Alone. Number 5 is Arthur Christmas. Number 4 is The Polar Express. Number 3 is The Muppet Christmas Carol on the combined list, surprising. Number 2 is The Grinch, which is very surprising.
Yeah, that is
and
surprising.
The greatest Christmas movie of all time, according to our combined podcast brains, is Elf.
There you go.
So there you go. That was the top 10 best Christmas films list as decided by us, which I will post once the podcast's been out for a little while as well, closer to Christmas. And I hope everybody's enjoyed talking all things festive, or at least listening to it, and maybe it prompts a little bit of discussion.
Does that
basically,
mean we'll have to have lots of cereal with syrup on now?
Yeah, because of Elf, yeah. We have to have spaghetti worms or whatever rubbish it is that he... Yes, and we have to all go running around saying we know Santa.
Yeah, have to put spaghetti first, and then the cereal, and then all the syrup, and then all the candy.
Oh, bless. I think the Muppets was robbed, and It's a Wonderful Life deserves more love as well. But we could be here all day with that. But no, I like that. That's a good, I think, solid top 10 list for everybody overall. But I hope everybody's having a really good time. And by the time this comes out, we'll be well into the Christmas spirit. It'll be around about the 9th or 10th, I think. 9th of December. So, I know there's still 2 or 3 weeks left, but we're starting to feel festive, and hopefully by now we've all got our decorations up and we're getting into the spirit and maybe watching some of these movies with hot cocoa or bits and pieces, and sharing them with the kids, and do continue to do that. That's great. So very Merry Christmas to everyone as we start the season, and it just remains for me to say thank you so much to my sister, my big sister Denise. Thanks for joining me for this one.
You're very welcome. Yes, I hope everyone has a lovely Christmas as well, and that we'll all obviously enjoy it with our families, especially after last year.
Yeah, exactly. It should be. We should have a good one. We're definitely aiming for it, so that's good. And is there anything you wanted to plug while you get a chance, like social medias or things places can find you, stuff like that?
Well, most people just always find me at T-Rex Mobile Disco and Children's Party Packages.
That's fair enough, and I've already basically given you the rest of your plugs. You're like I say, you can be hired, and you can look for their business page on the likes of Facebook and stuff. T-Rex Mobile Disco, kids parties, etc. You can also listen to Denise on Coast Radio every Monday at 12. That's midday, obviously.
Coast Radio, it is FM 106.6.
That's right, fair enough. And she doesn't really do the social media thing, but if you ever wanted to send her a message, I'm sure I could get it to her through me if anybody was to message. And speaking of which, of course, I'm at Ian Mike Wilson on Twitter, just my name on the likes of Facebook and Instagram. The podcast is at podcast_screen. And obviously we are on YouTube under, weirdly, my old handle, which I think is Marvel Man or Marvel Man Mike. But you can just type in the Silver Screen Podcast and hopefully find us, or just look for the links on social media. Yeah. Thanks again for joining me, Denise. Did the kids want to say a quick goodbye to the listeners while we're here, since we had the list?
I'll see if Harry, Jessica's drying her hair, but I'll get Harry.
Fair enough. Awesome.
Say goodbye.
Hi, do you want to say a quick hello and goodbye to our listeners, Harry, since we were sharing your Christmas list?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello. Goodbye.
Thanks for sharing your list, Harry. Hopefully either your mum can tell you what the top 10 list we've ended up with is, or you can wait and see the podcast when it comes out. And I hope you're having a lovely Christmas, you and your Jessica and the family.
Yeah, I hope you have a lovely Christmas too.
Yeah, awesome. Have a good one. All the best. See you later, kid. Bye. Bye for now. Awesome. Right. Thanks again then to our Denise and family for indulging me with this. And again, stay tuned. Next week, we will be back to a single film review. And I am going to be joined by my good friends, Andy and Phil. And we're going to be reviewing a film that isn't specifically Christmassy, but I think has that Christmassy fairy tale feel to it. And that's the film The Princess Bride. So do tune in for that next week. And in the meantime, happy Christmas, everyone. And goodbye from all of us. Goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, and in the meantime, in the epic words of Arnie, I'll be back.